He's a singer, a songwriter, a hit maker, and this week a guest on Minutia Men Celebrity Interview. In just a moment, we'll be chatting with Bruce Sudano.
The following is a Tony Lasano podcast, an Opie show on the Radio Misfits Podcast Network. This is the Minutia Men Celebrity Interview with Rick and Dave.
No Dave this week, but I'm still here, and so is Bruce Sudano. Bruce, thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, Rick. Happy to be with you.
So you got a new album out, which we'll get to, but I've been doing a deep dive into your catalog, and, man, there's some great stuff in there. Bruce got his big break working with Tommy James. He had a hit song with Tommy called Ball of Fire. And if you want to watch it performed, I'm talking to the listeners, not you, Bruce. I know you've seen it. There's an Ed Sullivan clip where he actually performed that song on the Ed Sullivan Show. That must have been a big thrill for you.
Yeah, well, that whole time period was very exciting for, an 18-year-old guy getting his first break into the real music business. And, Tommy was very gracious and basically took me under his wing, took me into the recording studio for the first time, showed me how a real record was made. Up until that time, I had just been, always dreaming about being, a songwriter and forming bands in my Flatbush neighborhood in Brooklyn and writing songs with and for the bands that I was in. And this year, it was 1968. I was in a band called Alive and Kickin', and we were the house band at the biggest club in Manhattan at that time. It was called Cheetah. And it was on 52nd Street, right off 8th Avenue, which, as fate would have it, was right around the corner from where Tommy was living. And he came in one night, and I got to meet him, and we became friends from that time on.
That's a great story. I mean, what a break that is. And Alive and Kicking is, that was a great band. I didn't realize that you were in that band until I started doing research for this. But, man, that song, Tighter, Tighter, I probably have played that song on the radio 1,000 times. I absolutely love it. If you don't mind, I'd like to play just a little clip of it here for our listeners.
Sure. It's a great sounding record.
Here it is. Everyone remembers this. Great song. Mm-hmm. So Tommy James was a co-writer on that song?
Tommy was a co-writer on that song, with a guy named Bob King. And Tommy produced the record. And, in 1970, it became a really big hit song. I got to take my first plane ride as a kid from Brooklyn out to Los Angeles to do American Bandstand, and Live and Kickin' took the picture for the cover of the album, swimming in the Pacific Ocean. And awesome. It was definitely high times, for sure.
That was a top 10 hit, wasn't it?
It was, yep. It was.
Yeah, I mean,
summer of 1970.
So, these young Brooklyn kids, you're out there in California. Had you ever been to California before?
I'd never been on a plane before.
Oh, wow. How cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was definitely, it was definitely exciting. Let's put it that way.
I bet. So,
and it was the beginning. I learned a lot through that experience. We were signed to Roulette Records. Roulette Records was an infamous record label at the time. This was late '60s, early '70s. There were still, these old school record business guys that ran the industry, who were definitely interesting characters with interesting personalities. And at Roulette Records, we had one of the most infamous, a guy named Morris Levy, who had a very interesting reputation. But he taught me a lot. My experience with Morris Levy was, aside from not getting paid, was that, he was a really smart guy, and if you asked in the right way, he would write you a check. So, I was, in my late teens, skinny kid from Brooklyn with hair, down past the shoulders, going up, knocking on his office door and then saying, well, you have to have an appointment. And I'll say, well, my record's on the radio, and I would go in, and he was like, what are you doing here? And I would say, well, we need some money. The PA system is broken. The bass player needs a new amp. The record's high on the charts. We need some money. And he would say, okay. And he would write a check for basically $1,500. This didn't happen often. It maybe happened 3 times, but it was how I got paid. And, but he taught me one great valuable lesson that has stayed with me my whole life, and that is the importance of publishing in the music business, the ability to own the copyrights and own the publishing on your songs. Yeah. So throughout my career, I've always made an effort to control the publishing, and that lesson has served me very well.
Did you ever see the HBO series Vinyl?
I'm sure I did. Yeah.
Because I think there was a character based on him in the
absolutely.
in that show. I mean, when you say he was, an interesting businesses, I think we all know what we're talking about here, right?
Well, you're from Chicago, so I think
exactly.
you know.
Exactly. I mean, you're from Brooklyn, too. It was not something that you were unfamiliar with in Brooklyn.
No, absolutely. And when we were coming up in Brooklyn playing all the clubs that we played, many of the clubs were controlled by these kind of guys. And so we had a lot of interaction with they were like, if anything happens, you guys just keep playing, know. So
it's funny, I've interviewed a bunch of guys from your era who all played in the clubs, and yeah, they were all run by the mafia, or at least partially owned by, and. Yeah, all of them, to a person, say, they were kind of nice to work for, which is kind of surprising.
Yeah, it's funny because they had a certain respect for the musicians, and which was really interesting to see. But that's what I found. They respected, the musician and what they did and their ability to do that. They were, in a way, they were kind of in awe of it.
Yeah, that's great. And same with comedians and, any performers, really. That's basically what. Yeah. So after Alive and Kicking, you were in a band called Brooklyn Dreams, which I now know why it was named that. And then this was in the height of the disco era. And I got to say, I've seen your stuff in 2 different movies that I think show people the unbelievable range that you guys had, because you wrote a song that was in the disco movie, Thank God It's Friday. And your band also appeared in the movie American Hot Wax, which was like about the 50s. And you performed a 50s song. Tell me about those 2 movie experiences.
Well, Brooklyn Dreams were formed in 1976 in L.A. Brooklyn Dreams was made up of myself, Joe Bean Esposito, and Eddie Hoganson. And we were guys who grew up in the same neighborhood in Brooklyn, and played in different bands together at different times. And we formed Brooklyn Dreams, and we got signed to do our first album in 1977, I think it was. And right as we were beginning the recording of our first album, we got asked to be in this movie called American Hot Wax. It was something that was very familiar to us because the story of the movie of American Hot Wax is based on the rock and roll shows that took place in the 50s at the Brooklyn Paramount and the Brooklyn Fox.
Right.
Shows that were run by, emceed by Alan Freed or Murray the K.
Right.
And so as kids, we got taken to these shows. My first experience seeing live music was at the Brooklyn Fox, seeing one of these rock and roll shows and seeing Chuck Berry and Jerry Lee Lewis and in fact, Joe Bean Esposito's father was like the stage manager there for a while, if I remember the story right. So we had this real affinity for that time, and we had grown up basically at the tail end of that whole doo-wop era. So we were very familiar with it. Dreams, we were a harmony group, coming out of that. So it was a really easy fit for us to play that role in American Hot Wax. We got brought into it by our friend Kenny Vance. So for the movie, we had this fictional group called the Planetones.
Yeah, I love that
name. There were some people in the movie who used the actual names of the groups that they were impersonating, but we had this fictional name called the Planetones, and it was a great experience. That also was. It was 3 months on the set of making this movie where you made such great friendships, with the other artists that we were there with, Brenda Russell and Lorraine Newman and Jay Leno and
it's a cult classic, that movie.
Yeah, it was a great time and a great experience, and I think as I'm talking, the song that we sang is "Rock and Roll Is Here to Stay."
Right, just a classic.
And in the movie, we did this dance routine that where we were emulating one of these groups from the 50s that did this kind of routine where the guys did splits and made like they were pitching the baseball and one guy was hitting, and anyway, it was fun. And also Richard Perry was in the movie. He played the great record producer George Goldner. For those that know, Richard Perry is one of the greatest music producers in pop music history.
Yeah.
So
for the listeners that have not seen that movie, I strongly recommend it. It really is it really captures a time and place, doesn't it?
It really does. It really does. It's one of those cult classics, but it's really, a lot of times the cult classics aren't really that great of a movie, but in this case, it's actually a really good movie and a cult classic. So yeah, if you have the chance, go see it. And the other movie, you asked about the other movie.
Thank God It's Friday.
Oh, Thank God It's Friday. Yeah. We weren't actually in Thank God It's Friday, but at that time, we were around the whole Casablanca team. We knew everybody up at the label, and they were making this movie, and Donna Summer was one of the acts in the movie, and so we ended up writing this song called "Take It to the Zoo." Yeah. And it's actually, you can't even tell this story this way anymore, because the where we got the title from was in that same year Rocky was the big movie.
Right.
And Donna's middle name was Adrian. So in order not to call her by her name, Donna, I would always say, "Yo, Adrian." So when we came to writing the song, we're like, what should we call this song? So then, there was this scene in Rocky where one of the characters says to Rocky about his girlfriend, take her to the zoo. Retards like the zoo.
Yeah, that's right.
And like I said, you can't even say that word anymore. But this was the culture then, and that's where we got the title for that song.
So
and that was.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I think that's all I was. Okay. I don't know where I was going there.
Well, you mentioned Donna Summer. Obviously, you later married Donna Summer, and I was a big fan of hers, forever. I grew up in Germany, and she was on the hit parade all the time. She spoke fluent German. I mean, she was actually quite brilliant, wasn't she?
Yeah. She was amazing. Yep. She lived in Germany for 8 years. She spoke fluent German. Her first husband, Helmut, was Austrian. And, Donna was amazing on every level. Beautiful talent, the most amazing singer, great songwriter, very funny individual, very kind individual, and very smart individual.
Yeah. You obviously wrote a bunch of songs with her and for her, and the biggest hit was "Bad Girls," and I bet you the checks are still coming in for that one, aren't they?
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Any
idea how many copies that record has sold?
I really don't know, but millions.
Isn't that nice to have to be able to say that? That's awesome.
Yeah, no, it was great. It was I got to co-write 4 songs on that album, and it Brooklyn Dreams toured with her. It was called the Summer Nights Dream Tour. We toured the country together, and it was another great moment in time for me.
So Donna passed away, sadly, a few years ago, but I know your daughters have carried on in the business. Tell us about Brooklyn. I can guess why she's named that. And Amanda.
Yeah. Well, Brooklyn is an actor / director. She recently co-directed the documentary Love to Love You, Donna Summer. She's an actress. She's been on, a zillion CSIs and Taken and all these kinds of shows, as well as movies. And Amanda is part of a duo called Johnny Swim with her husband Abner. They're actually on tour right now in the States. And they have a new album out called When the War is Over. That's absolutely awesome. Check it out. And
Well, they had so much genetic advantage there. I mean, talk about some talent in the family. Yeah, well, yeah.
It's kind of like, first of all, the thing is that they've done it on their own. It wasn't like mom and dad made phone calls for them or influenced them to go in a certain direction or do a certain thing. They have been very independent about their decisions and what they wanted to do and how they've done it. And I couldn't be more proud of them, And the eldest girl is Mimi, who was Donna's daughter from her marriage with Helmut, who, I raised from the time she was a little girl, and she's also a brilliant woman and a special talent.
Yeah, that's great.
So yeah, I now have 9 grandchildren.
Oh, congratulations. That's fantastic. I love it.
Isn't that hip?
Yeah, totally. Nothing cooler. Some of your songs have been covered. You mentioned that you learned that you got to get the publishing rights, right? So that's being the songwriter is the key, isn't it? And some of your songs have been covered by people like Dolly Parton and Robert Palmer. I know you wrote a song for Michael and Jermaine Jackson. Do you consider yourself more of a songwriter or more of a performer?
Well, songwriting has always been my first dream and always my primary goal. So yeah, that's the foundation of who I am and what I do. And I mean, I've always been a performer in that I've always been in a band since I'm a youngster. But songwriting is the place where, you know, I know who I am. You know, if I get dazed and confused along the way, you know, I sit down at the piano or pick up the guitar, and I feel like I'm at home. So you know, I love to perform, and I just last week, I'm speaking to you from Italy right now.
Oh, wow!
And just last week, I played at the Beatles Museum. There's a Beatles Museum in Italy, which I had no idea of.
Wow!
But there I was. I got booked at the Beatles Museum in Italy, and it was a great night. You know, a great crowd. The audiences don't really know everything that you're saying,
right? But
they're so familiar with American music, and they so love American music that, you know, they're just a great audience to perform in front of.
Well, let's talk about your new album, Talking Ugly Truth, Telling Pretty Lies. Tell us about, you know, the origin of that and what we should know about it.
Talking Ugly Truth, Telling Pretty Lies is, you know, I'm a guy of a certain age, and
me too, by the way.
You know, I write songs about where I am, who I am, how I am, so, you know, you know, there's a couple of songs on there that speak, you know, directly to, you know, the baby boomer, and a song called How'd You Get Here, another one called Navigating the Unforeseen. There's another song about gun control. It's called Under the Gun, which is an interesting song. Talking Ugly Truth, Telling Pretty Lies is a story song about a couple of renegades who think that they can break the rules and get away with it forever, only to find out that they can't. And at the same time, it's a little bit of a point of view about the assault on truth in our culture these days. So there's that one. There's a song called Two Bleeding Hearts that's a duet with the great Valerie Simpson. Valerie Simpson of Ashford and Simpson, member of the Songwriter Hall of Fame, Ain't No Mountain High Enough, Ain't Nothing Like the Real Thing, I'm Every Woman.
Yeah, well, just little things like that.
And she blessed me by agreeing to sing on one of my songs. So it's an extra special treat. That song is called Two Bleeding Hearts. What else is on the record?
Well, why don't you tell people where they can get it? How can they get your album? You know, how can they follow you? Do you have like a social media presence for them?
All of the above, you know, Spotify, Amazon Music, iTunes, all the obvious places, Facebook, Instagram, all like that. I'm easily findable. You can YouTube. I have a big YouTube presence. I just got word today that I released a video a few weeks ago of the song How'd You Get Here, and my manager just told me today that it has 92 million views.
Wow. Wow.
Which I was like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
You know?
That's awesome. Well, Bruce, all right, go ahead.
No, thank you, man. Thanks for the time. And
well, I just wanted to thank you for being on the show. I want to give you best wishes for continued success. I know that there's a pasta plate waiting for you out there in Italy. So I want you to go enjoy Italy. But I really appreciate you being on the show, and thanks a lot. And thanks for all the great years of great music.
Thanks, Rick. And when I get to Chicago, come and see me.
I absolutely will. I'll definitely give you a call when it gets to be that time. Thanks, Bruce.
Absolutely. All right, man. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Have a good one. Bye-bye. There he goes, live from Italy. That's Bruce Sudano. That was a fun conversation. As he mentioned, you can get his album. His new album is called Talking Ugly Truth and Telling Pretty Lies. All right, we have people to thank for the show. First of all, thanks to Dave for not coming. I'd like to thank our executive producer, Tony Lasano, with Opie Shows. Also, can't forget Ed Silla with the Radio Misfits Podcast Network. Great Talk Radio isn't dead. It just moved to a better place, which is RadioMisfits.com. And we'll be back again soon with another episode of Minutia Men Celebrity Interview.
The proceeding was a presentation of the Radio Misfits Podcast Network. Find our other great shows on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, and at RadioMisfits.com. Thank you.
This has been a presentation of Opie Productions.
Tony, can you shut up?